Hello everyone, PTR testing of a new raid has recently begun, so it's time to prepare for the new boss fights. Today we will take a look at the first boss in the dungeon journal, the Tarragrue. Let's go! The first thing to note is that the boss is very fat and deals a lot of damage. The anima powers located in 4 large Goliaths will help us handle it. You can reroll these powers. If you are not satisfied with the proposed options, then you can drop them at the spires, which are located at the entrance to the boss room, and then you will need to reactivate the anima spheres. DPS are advised to take a couple of damage anima powers and a couple of survivability anima powers. Initially, it's better for tanks to choose maximum survivability. Healers take anima powers to increase healing, survivability and power that buff the whole raid. For example, increase movement speed. Now let's move on to the boss's abilities. Tanks swap after each hit of Overpower, which deals strong physical damage, stuns for 4 seconds, and applies a debuff to the target that increases incoming physical damage by 200%. Occasionally the boss will use the Predator's Howl, followed by Chains of Eternity. The Predator's Howl applies a debuff to random players, which fears all players within a radius of 5 yards. The debuff can be dispelled. Almost immediately after the Howl, the boss marks a random player with a blue mark, and after 8 seconds throws the Chains of Eternity at the target. Chains inflict heavy physical damage to the first player on their way, after which the boss instantly kills the player hit by the chains. Sometimes the boss will dissolve in the fog, while creating his own images. Images explode after a short period of time, dealing fatal damage within a radius of 25 yards. Periodically, the Tarragrue will debuff random players with the Grasp of Death, which deals heavy periodic damage every 2 seconds for 40 seconds. In the dungeon journal, the ability is marked as interruptible, but in fact, during testing, this cast could not be kicked. Also, sometimes the boss applies an enraged buff to himself, called Fury of the Ages, which increases his damage and attack speed by 25% per stack. On heroic difficulty, the Jailer will create Remnants of Forgotten Torments. Players will be able to soak these torments. A Remnant Upper Reaches Smite increases the physical damage done by the Tarragrue by 50%. The player who soaked part of the torment receives 10% more physical damage for 1.5 minutes. A Remnant Mortarghast Echoes increases the magic damage done by the Tarragrue by 50%. The player who soaked part of the torment receives 10% more magic damage for 1.5 minutes. A Remnant Soulforge hit periodically inflicts moderate damage to the entire raid. The player who soaked part of the torment takes minor periodic fire damage for 1.5 minutes. At 10% of the boss's health, the Jailer takes away all anima powers and increases the Tarragrue's damage by 500%. Tanks swap after each Overpower hit. All other players must spread 5 yards apart from each other before the howls. Healers should dispel the debuffs left by the howl, prioritize melee DPS players, because it's more difficult for them to maneuver and find free space without losing DPS. The player targeted by the chains must use immunity, otherwise this player has to be blocked by another player with immunity. Remember that the chains kill the first player they meet on their way. I think that this ability is still unfinished. There should be another way to avoid damage from chains beside immunities. The Grasp of Death ability probably also works incorrectly. The journal indicates that this cast can be kicked, but in fact it could not be kicked. Healers must be ready to heal the heavy damage of this ability. This is where the anima powers for removing the buffs come in handy. During the Hungering Mist phase, look for a safe spot. It will be highlighted by a white pillar. Here you will need the anima powers or abilities that increase movement speed. Soak remnants quickly. It's not recommended for the tanks to soak a Remnant Upper Reaches Smite. You don't want to take extra physical damage. A remnant Mortrigar Echoes can be soaked by all players who have received anima powers that increase magic damage resistance. The remnant Soulforge Hit should not be soaked by players who have already soaked Mortrigar's Echoes. Classes that can remove Enrage should watch for Fury of the Ages buff on the boss and remove it immediately. At 10% boss's health, prepare to kite the boss until you finish him off. Spread throughout the room. Classes that have a taunt can aggro the boss back and forth to each other. You can save heroism for this phase if you don't have enough DPS to finish it off. That's all for me. If you have any questions or feedback, leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.